Thank you very much, Andrew. Hello everybody, good afternoon, and welcome to our talk, last of the day. I'll be helped in this presentation by Tom and Vin, and we'll give our introduction at the end. But very much looking forward to sharing what will happen if you were to integrate market research and CI together, what additional benefit you as an organization can drive, and synergies that you can uncover and realize. So without further ado, I know we are a bit late, running behind the schedule, so I'll get started. And please keep your questions towards the end, and we will answer them when we get the chance. So the title is that. So our premise is that in order for a successful brand launch or to maintain a brand success, any successful brand needs a really intimate knowledge of their target audience, but underpinned by a really unique value proposition. And in order to do that, you have to look at 4 C's. One is, of course, your customer. And to understand the customer, in our case, is a pharma healthcare professional. Pharmaceutical reps go and educate the healthcare professionals. But in order to educate them, there's a lot of messaging goes to educate our healthcare professionals. And all of that to understand the needs of healthcare professionals, which is the physicians, the patients, the caregiver, the nurses, and the pharmacist. One would do a market research, is to understand an intimate level and drive insights. And so that's customers. So if you look at but customers, very important, but at the same time, you also need to understand what your competitors are doing. And in order to understand the competitors and outflank your competitors, you need to be able to look around the bend and minimize your blind spot. And that's why CI comes in. So you understand customers and competitors. So those are. But behind that all, there is the context, the climate, in which climate we are dealing with, such as regulatory climate or some other climate, as we have seen 2 years ago with the pandemic and other things, so which are not in our control that much, and how we're going to impact that. And then there are some controllers, or you can call them gatekeepers. So these are, like in our case, it will be the market, the policymakers, the healthcare, national budgets, the national healthcare systems, which are run by the bureaucrats and the market access people. And there we also need to understand what drives them, what motivates them, what are the challenges they are seeing, what are the burden of disease, and things like that they are looking at. So in order for a brand to be really successful, you need a holistic view of the marketplace. And 2 of them is customers and competitors are key, but also the controllers and the climate in which you are operating. So that's our central purpose. So I'm just going to go quickly to what is the market research. So for those of you who don't know market research, the premise of market research is that you study a small sample size and hope that sample is representative of the large sample size. So if you look at the national polls, they usually do 1,000 sample, and they project on a national level whether which party is going to win or not going to win, and usually it's around 1,000. In our case, if you study a small subsegment, and it will help to understand your existing customers, understand the market needs, and to develop the market strategy, and anticipate and minimize risks to do that. And also market research is used as a tracker. Many of you do trackers here, and to track how your product is performing, what things need to be changed. And the market research answered those kind of questions like unmet needs, what are drivers and barriers of prescribing in this particular area, where would the product fit in the treatment algorithm, where in the treatment pathways, how does the messaging or the branding that you have developed resonate with the target audience, which is the healthcare professionals. In US, you also have OTC, so the consumers, which is the patients. And what are potential uptakes by the healthcare professionals? So if you show a concept testing or product testing, whether the physician would prescribe that, and what portion of their patient or which type of patient they would prescribe that particular target product profile. So in a nutshell, you study a small sample, we apply on the large sample, we are hoping the sample that we are studying is representative of the large sample. That is pretty much what we're trying to do. So in market research, very much is about what has happened in past, what is in present. Because you're asking opinions from the doctors and the target audience, their frustration, their challenges. So we can also ask them about future prediction, but they are much more based on their experience of prescribing. So this is very much in present. And there are two kinds of market research. One is qualitative, one is quantitative. Qualitative market research deals with the smaller numbers, and it's much more free-flowing, open discussion. Even though we have a discussion guide, it is less structure. We allow the respondents to talk about different things, and it helps us to discover things that we might not have thought in the discussion guide. And this is where, when you probe a respondent, you will uncover some. So this is the value of the moderator is critical in the qualitative market research. So the samples tend to be small. So I would say if you did 30 sample in the qualitative, it's very big. Typically, you would have anywhere 5 to 12 sample size per country. In Europe, in US, we would have a higher, so sample size are small. The way you collect your data is also varied. So if you're doing, for example, ethnography study, so you will do on location. Nowadays, in the COVID time, we also develop digital ethnography, which is driven by your digital footprint. But we did an ethnography on rheumatoid arthritis patient, for example, and we followed patient from morning 6 a.m. till 10 p.m., and we were following that patient to understand what was their needs, and just as an observation without any prompting or anything. So that's ethnography. But if you did different kind of studies, so the location is very varied. In good old days, we also went to central location, which is with a two-way mirror, and where we have a focus group discussion, and there will be 6 to 8 people. I think is somebody here from the field agency. I don't know if anybody is here from field agency. They would have the facilities, viewing facilities that we will go there. And in also good old days, we would also go to the physicians' offices to do one-to-one IDIs. We have done work in India, for example, doing an interview with physician in the taxis, in the car, because in India, the problem was that even though we have a 45-minute, or same in China, 45-minute with physician, you think that you have the 45-minute or 1 hour booked with them, but nobody respects that. At the same time, many other people will be coming, the nurse will be coming, somebody else will be coming. The only way we managed to overcome that we will pick up the doctors from their home, and we'll tell them, we will take you in a nice taxi. And usually the traffic in Mumbai or Bombay or Delhi is long, so we will have a half an hour, 45 minutes with them uninterpreted. So that's just thinking creatively, how you're going to get those people. So the location is different. And the interviews are semi-structured, means you have a discussion guide, but you can also be free-flowing. And analysis also, because this qualitative data is mostly verbal text, audio recording or video recording. So we are looking at word association, we are looking for tone, subtext, tonality, mood. So the interpretation by experienced content analyzer becomes very important. It's a nuance between the language and what verbs they are using, where they're putting the weight in the conversation becomes very important. And the reports are, again, is directional. It cannot be definitive. Reports are directional, and but it provides how and why and those kind of questions that in quantitative we measure what and how many, but those kind of things. So this is qualitative, but if you go to the quantitative, similar situation where the samples are large, driven by statistical significance. So typically one would have n over more than 30, but ideally, if you are in primary care, you would do a big sample size per country, sometimes 75 or 120. But if you are in a rare diseases or specialist care, the sample could be smaller, but should be at least 30. Mostly it's been now moved to online, but in good old days we used to have computer-assisted face-to-face interviews. So we would go to doctor's office and use the computer if it was a conjoint type questions. So because or is adaptive conjoint or the full concept conjoint, that will be in the doctor's office. And again, very old. I'm talking about 30 years and before. It was paper pencil. And we collected the information on the paper pencil. But it's much more structured, so it's like close-ended question with some open-ended. You will have option A, B, C, and you have multiple choice, so it's structured. And data analysis is done very much based on statistical processes, so you will first cleanse the data, tabulate the data, you'll do the bivariate, univariate analysis, and then you'll do descriptive statistics, then you'll do causality between the statistics and look at the relationship between the data and look at the pattern where we got. And typically, if you look at the descriptive statistics, you will do average, mean, mode, etc., and we'll take the outliers out. But you will do factor analysis and high level of hierarchical base analysis or some segmentation depending on k-means or whatever that might be. But it is very, very quantitative, but much more definitive because the sample is large and things like that. Analysis of competitive environment is essential to planning any brand. So obviously for marketing, you need to understand what is your competitor's strategy, but you also can do with both competitive and analysis. What are strengths and weaknesses of your main competitors, top 3 competitors, and how will competitor react to your strategy? What will be they doing, and what will be their tactics, and how will they react? So you need both to get a better understanding of your target market. So let me just quickly introduce you CI. So competitive intelligence is a lot of, in pharmaceutical, we have wealth of data, too much data explosion. And we think, oh, we know everything about our client. But if you use the analogy of iceberg, we only look at a tip of the iceberg. Underneath, there's so much information that is not that visible. And these are some, so of course the companies will make press release, they will have their website, they will have analyst report, they will have scientific paper, clinical trial, list prices, that's all public. But if you want to know when is generic coming, when is biosimilar coming, what are the, before the trials are published, what are the clinical trial protocols, what are the clinical trials running like, how is the patient recruitment going, level of discount or things are happening, what are the strategic partnership they are looking for or early access scheme. Those information are hidden and only using very advanced and sophisticated CI techniques are able to uncover those. And those can again give you a full picture because market research will give you one picture which is important, CI will give you one picture which is also important, but together they are mega big and mega important, what I'm saying. So CI is all about gathering a snippet of information. So we have, when we do primary CI, I'm talking about now, when we do primary CI, we will talk to one source, we'll pick up some information, we'll talk to another source, we'll pick up some other information, and we will talk to another source, we'll pick up some other information. And it is the role of our analyst and to first of all verify and triangulate the information is correct or not, Once they are correct, then trying to piece the information together, build a picture. So the analogy here is that if you see the picture on the left, you can see a picture, it doesn't make sense. But people like June and Rachele and Vin and Tom who are here, Aziza who are here, their job is to make this into this. It's connecting the dot and bringing the data alive. And that's where the beauty of CI comes in, because it's not always apparent what is it, because we're only picking a snippet of information from one source. Once it's all been analyzed and assembled, so it's very much like detective work, going to a scene, asking the question, oh, who was there, why was there, and discounting some other things, and then piecing the information together. It requires a lot of analysis to make it all happen. And in a typical CI engagement, there are multiple pieces. So there's a lot of CI engagement which is like annual 12 months or 24 months ongoing monitoring, and it requires lots of inputs. So like conference coverage, it requires primary intelligence, secondary intelligence, and looking at all the investor briefing, attending the investor call, deciphering that, keeping the alerts, analyzing the alerts, and doing the secondary tracking of all the movements. And bringing it all together, integrating it all together, then triangulating it, synthesizing it, and corroborating it will make that intelligence intelligence. So otherwise, before that is all information. So all here is information, and then after all this is done and validation, then becomes the intelligence. So intelligence takes certain step before we call them intelligence. And intelligence is a very time-sensitive commodity. Once everybody knows it becomes a news, that's not intelligence. That is already gone. It is already. And so there's a breaking news, alerts, insight reports, actionable recommendation. So it's all about converting the key insight to foresights. In terms of, just to summarize, if you look at how the market research and CI interact, so if you look at market research is about current condition, market awareness, etc., which is current and present, but there is overlap here. If you look at the Venn diagram, and the future is a bit hazy. That's why the data is line is dotted. We don't know the future, but having done both market research and CI together, you can make this a little bit more stronger and have a more, much more better understanding of the future. And in terms of I'm going to pass that to you, but I just wanted to talk about one more slide before I pass it to Tom. So if you look at, this is a bit complex map, but here we have tried to overlay what can you get from primary intelligence, what can you gain from the secondary, primary market research, secondary market research, CI and prime, and how that it all happens. So if you look at on this axis, you have effort required to obtain information, market opinion, and competitive strategies. So if you look at the primary market research, it's all about willingness to prescribe, which is buy or use, product perception, TPP testing, concept testing, pricing, discounting, understanding the unmet needs and all that. But if you look at, so it's all about talking to healthcare professional and getting the opinion. In the secondary domain is things like clinical trial data, what's happening on the competitive landscape, etc. All that data is available. There's a plethora of data that we buy, such as AlphaSense, Cortellis, Evaluate Pharma. There's whole loads of data, and that all, plus all the investor calls, all the news releases, etc. So all that comes into the secondary CI. And then primary CI, things which are not published anywhere, which is not listed in any database, which is not in any website. These are the things in the minds of our competitors' executives. They are in their planning cycle. They are not yet public knowledge, and ethically extracting that knowledge and vetting it and corroborating it and presenting and analyzing it. So things like when they will be able to launch, when they are planning to launch the generic, what are they going to be product strategy for the future before they become, how they're going to message this thing. Those are through, and also on a clinical trial progress, how their recruitment going, all those are through primary CI. So if a company were to merge both together, then there's a lot of synergy between the different disciplines. So I'll pass it to Tom. Thank you. I'll come back.
Thank you, Rafat. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all. I'm going to take a few slides just to kind of recapitulate the benefits that come in certain situations when you might want to consider a hybrid approach of MR combined with CI. So as Rafat highlighted quite clearly, there are specific questions that market research can answer. And likewise with CI, there are specific questions that CI can answer. And there are certain situations when there are synergies by combining these two work streams in parallel, so they feed into each other. So the CI is asking, what are the competitors doing? And of course, their market research is asking, how are the customers responding? So for example, when we're conducting competitive intelligence to establish things like the trial timelines of our competitors, what kind of clinical data they have or what kind of clinical data they're expecting to have, that can be very useful information that can feed into an opportunity assessment type market research project. So that could help us design the objectives of the market research project, and it also can help inform the production of the target product profile. Another example is in competitive intelligence, we get information on competitors' capabilities, their resources, their kind of financial budget for a particular brand, and we get information on the kind of promotional outreach they're undertaking. And market research allows us to interact with the stakeholders that are relevant, that are being targeted with this promotional outreach, to see how effective it is, to see how it's engaging with them, what the strengths are, what the weaknesses are, and what the unmet needs are in the outreach. So yes, in many cases, a combination of market research and competitive intelligence can help the brand, the product, adapt to a changing market environment. And hybrid CI and MR engagements, they often give an added advantage of deeper insights into the target market, which are manifested by advantages in research quality. So if we're conducting competitive intelligence, we might be able to get really in-depth knowledge of the market and the competitors, and this helps us to design the research of the market research project and the field materials, because we have a thorough knowledge of the competitive landscape, the current and the upcoming competition. If we conduct CI, which allows us to understand fully competitor strategy and gives us a strong knowledge of the brands, we can use this knowledge to interpret more meaningfully the research outputs we get and build relevant implications and recommendations from them. And that works both ways too. So if we get the market research outputs that feed into the competitive landscape, if we're conducting competitive intelligence in parallel and we get some news, we know exactly what that means with respect to the market because we've done the market research. So as well as quality advantages, there are certain research efficiency advantages in terms of conducting the hybrid approach as well. So when we conduct primary MR and CI, we develop these networks, we develop these relationships with stakeholders such as KOLs and PIs. And when we have these networks, it makes it easier if we want to undertake a market research project to recruit on experts that we're familiar with. And these experts may not be in typical panels. If we're conducting CI, we have real-time awareness of the latest news. And if we have this news, we're able to adapt quickly the design of a market research project we're undertaking in parallel to make sure that everything is cutting edge and adapted accordingly. And if through CI we're getting awareness of rumors about a particular competitor, what they're doing, before these rumors become reality, we might want to test how the rumors, if they become reality, how they're received in the field, what the stakeholder responses are. And we can do that by having market research done in parallel. So I'm going to present a case study of a hybrid MR-CI project that we undertook, which is aiming to kind of emphasize where these synergies can be really realized in practice. So in this particular case, we worked with a client who was in the hem-oncology space. So the client's brand, Product M, it was facing quite strong competition from one major competitor, and the client wanted advice on how they can boost the share of their brand by improving the promotional outreach that they are doing to key customers. So we, together with the client, we framed 4 key business questions to try and answer this main question. So first, how do we increase awareness and diagnosis rates to grow the top end of the funnel? What are the most effective forms of promotional outreach, and how can we maximize the return on our spend? What is the optimal channel mix? How can we maximize our share of voice in the channels that matter most? And what content should we be targeting different physician profiles with that can have the most impact on their treatment choices? So these were the research questions that instructed how we would go about conducting the research and ultimately lead to the insights and recommendations that would feed into the strategic brand planning for the client. So what we did was we built a framework consisting of 3 kind of main branches or pillars. So competitor capability. So we wanted to know what, from the competitor perspective, what people did they have on the ground with respect to promotional outreach? What digital tools were they leveraging? And how much financial backing did the particular brand have? In terms of competitor activity, we wanted to know what channels the promotional materials were being communicated through and what formats were these materials taking? Who was being targeted and what was the frequency of interaction with the people being targeted? And finally, we wanted to know the impact of this promotional outreach. So what were the nature of the interactions that we're having with the recipients? What were the recipients' preferences when it comes to the information that they receive? What are their perceptions on the products that result from this kind of outreach? And what are the unmet needs? What do they feel is missing from this kind of outreach? So of course, each source of information that we use here provides a unique piece of this puzzle to give us the overall holistic picture that we're looking for. So we conducted secondary research, secondary competitive intelligence research, to establish things like what are the competitors' campaigns and concepts? What are they messaging on? What clinical data are they highlighting? And what social media activities are they engaged in? In addition to the secondary CI, we conducted primary CI, so targeting specific company sources to get that harder to obtain information with respect to the competitors' activities. So what is the size and the structure of the competitors' field force? What specialties are they targeting, and what's the frequency of their interaction with these specialties? What kind of things, what are the common topics of conversation with the prescribers? And how do they leverage digital channels of communication if they do? And in addition to these, we conducted primary market research. So we engaged with HCPs directly, and we got information from them with respect to what their current prescribing behaviors are, what the drivers are to prescribe from their point of view. What kind of interactions do they have with the competitor company, and how frequent are these? What is the content of the conversations that are had and the outreach materials that are made? What support resources are provided? And importantly, how do the HCPs perceive the utility of what they're receiving promotionally from the competitor? So through this approach, combining CI and MR together for specific questions provided information that helped us come up with really robust recommendations for the client. So one of the first recommendations, so through the MR approach we took, what we identified was of a specific specialty who is involved in the treatment of these patients. This specialty is divided into 2 kind of groups. One who mostly refer patients to other individuals of the same specialty. They have the capacity to diagnose and treat, but they lack the knowledge to do so and the awareness to do so. And of course the others who are the ones actively treating, and these are the treating physicians. And what we found through CI was the competitor was targeting the treating physicians for awareness and education around the disease and diagnostics, but they weren't targeting the referring physicians, even though that they could. So our recommendations to the client were to focus awareness creation efforts outside of the current target list that they had, and to message heavily on the use of diagnostic tools, techniques, and also the use of the product itself to grow their prescriber base. Something else that we explored through the hybrid approach, through market research, we identified 2 key specialties involved in treating this disease. So specialty A, their patient volume was moderate, but they were much more familiar with the competitor brand. And through CI, we found out that these are the ones who are being actively targeted by the competitors. Specialty B's patient volume was actually typically higher than Specialty A, but they were less familiar with the competitor brand. And the CI approach made us realize that these are the ones that are not being targeted by the competitors. So of course the recommendations were quite obvious here. The client should direct more promotional resources at Specialty B, and in addition they should tailor the content and the support resources that they provide Specialty B to be as impactful as it possibly could be. And finally, something very interesting that we found through the CI approach was that the key competitor, uses a specific strategy to optimize the targeting and the delivery of the promotional outreach they do. And we've tried to depict that in the bottom left corner of the slide. So what they do is they generate tailored content, which is tailored based on HCP's needs and interests, and this is distributed in relevant channels to the HCPs. And then using a Rainmaker platform, which registers which parts each HCP finds most interesting, they're able to better understand and refine the promotional materials that they're generating, allowing additional multi-channel personalized content to be distributed to HCPs through, emails, personalized websites, webinars, that kind of thing. So what could we find out from market research with respect to this? Well, we found out from the stakeholders who were receiving the promotional outreach, the competitor did indeed have greater brand recognition as a result of this. And we also found that the interests and preferences in what kind of topics of materials and support resources these different specialties were receiving varied greatly. And something that was interesting was we found that the stakeholders got a little bit frustrated when they were bombarded with a lot of promotional materials that wasn't really focused and tailored to them. So what did we recommend the client do? So we recommended to the client to generate a digital content library. So this library would house all of the promotional materials relevant for this particular disease and for the brand. And this library, sales reps and MSLs would promote this library to HCPs across the spectrum of who's treating within this disease space. They would allow them to engage on the digital library. They would encourage them to engage on the digital library. And then when the HCPs access this library, they can specifically go towards the topics, the promotional materials that are most relevant to them. So they have a very tailored approach to the promotional communication. And with that, I will pass back to Rafat.
No, thank you, Tom. So I know we are nearly there for the cocktail. So we have we're nearly there. So no, thank you. So what we are saying that if you combine the MR and CI together, it will help you to stay one or many steps ahead of your competition. So MR helps us to understand the market in terms of the market size, market forecast, the trend in the trends, and segmentation. But also it helps us to understand our target customer much more at granular level, at intimate level, in terms of unmet need, the challenges, the brand awareness, preference, things like that, and purchase dynamics, what will drive them. And in competitive intelligence, you can understand things which are not able to come from healthcare professionals, which is from the competitor's perspective in terms of clinical trial investment, organizational design, things which are yet to be in public knowledge, which are not yet, but also on the product or brand asset knowledge. So if you combine the market research, you do market research, you get insight. You do CI, you get insight. But if you combine both together, you get foresight. So that's what we are proposing. So thank you very much for that. And so this slide was prepared by Vin and Tom. So thank you all very much. And if there are any questions, we'll take the questions now. So yeah, come, yeah. So
I can shout.
now we have this. Yeah, they're bringing it.
I actually have a question to Tom because you finished with a massive cliffhanger. So what was the outcome in terms of, real life value?
Yeah, can you hear me okay? Yeah. Yes, I think Vin was heavily involved in this project. I think I'll give him an opportunity to speak.
So, to the extent that we know what the client did with this is that they this heavily informed their brand plan. And I think the biggest takeaway for them was that, and one thing that was not very clear, and because we had to, redact a lot of things, but one thing was that the competitor had their product was actually indicated across several different indications, one of which was what the client's product was competing with, right? And so the competitor's focus was not the disease space that our client's focus was. And our client wasn't really aware to what extent that is true, because all they saw was the competitor had a higher share than them. So the way we opened their eye, or this research was able to open their eyes in the biggest way possible, was to let them know that there are so many low-hanging fruits. There are so many, people in your target list or adjacent to your target list that are just there to educate and bring on board and become new prescribers. That you don't have to do something very fancy. You just have to find the right people, message to them as you are, but also give them the flexibility of choosing how they want to be educated and what topics and what promotional material they want to see. So I think this led them to a bit of rethinking of their strategy and recalibration of the whole problem to understand that we don't necessarily need to do something very different. We need to go after the right type of people, identify them, and message them as we have been doing all along.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions? Yeah, Suzanne.
Thank you. Thank you very much for a great presentation. I was just wondering, do you come across many situations where your clients are not doing any competitive intelligence, that they have to go into this deep dive with the market research, or are you building on existing competitive intelligence that the vendor may have? What's the general trends that you see?
So this tends to be in a smaller size, mid-sized company. In a large size company, the CI and MR is still quite separate, run like silos. And we are trying very hard to impress upon them, if you can combine the two together, there will be better synergy and better outcome.
Yeah, because in this particular case, the client was the commercial brand team, like the franchise lead was the one who came to us with these questions. And then they came to it from an approach of, this probably needs CI. And we said, oh wait, we can also do a bit of MR here to enrich that. And they immediately grabbed onto that. Versus if it's a bigger company, if it's CI function asking for CI, they're not really going to be interested in market research, right? So it's finding the right, because at the top, all the insights have to come up somewhere and get amalgamated to help the high-level decisions. But unless we start thinking of both market research and CI as something to be coordinated at the ground level when you're actually conducting it, you cannot get the same amounts of same depth of insights by just post-processing MR and CI gathered from different studies, because this was tailor-made. This was made specifically with one big central question in mind.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. If there are no further questions, well, thank you all for taking your time and sharing your time with us. So thank you very much.